The station had smelled like fried circuits and disappointment since Nolan Vance had arrived, which made sense because both described his last job interview. Outpost Delta 9 wasn't the kind of place you ended up by choice. It was the kind of place that asked, "What's the worst that could happen?" and then showed you. On the surface, it was a mining hub orbiting Darren 6, staffed by a mix of ex-cons, corporate washouts, and the kind of AI whose developers clearly had issues with their fathers. Nolan had signed up as a maintenance tech. Low risk, low pay, high chance of being forgotten. Perfect for someone who'd once blown up a cargo freighter by mislabeling a crate of unstable plasma noodles. He was halfway through repairing a faulty oxygen regulator, knee-deep in wires that hissed like angry snakes, when a strange vibration hummed through the floor. Not the usual tremor from drilling. This was subtler, more rhythmic. He frowned, twisted a panel, and peeked down the maintenance chute. A sliver of light blinked at the bottom. Red, blue, red, blue. That wasn't standard. That was, suspicious. And suspicious, Nolan had learned the hard way, was exactly what he should avoid. Which is why, naturally, he grabbed a flashlight, a stale protein bar, and crawled in head first like an idiot. It wasn't a long crawl, though it felt longer with his belt snagging every 5 seconds and a metallic voice on his comms politely reminding him that unauthorized access to lower levels would result in both termination and a non-refundable lunch credit. When he dropped into the chamber, he landed in a crouch that might have looked cool if he hadn't then toppled sideways into a crate labeled, "Do not sit." It broke his fall, also his dignity. The room was cold, not in the temperature sense. Cold in the way forgotten places are. Silent, heavy. In the center, a transparent containment pod glowed faintly. Inside it sat 2 figures. At first glance, human. At second glance, no. Their ears were elongated, graceful, rising like curved blades from beneath tangled hair. One sat with her arms crossed, eyes sharp and bored. The other lay on her side, humming something tuneless while braiding the ends of her own hair. They were dressed in standard-issue gray jumpsuits, but they made them look like couture. They looked up in eerie unison. The humming stopped. Nolan froze. He considered a variety of explanations for why he was here, none of which would sound less insane than, "I heard a weird sound and followed it like a horror movie extra." So instead, he went with honesty. Sort of. "Hey, I'm with the janitorial crew, just checking on your lighting situation?" The sitting one blinked once, slowly. "You are not wearing a janitorial insignia." "Budget cuts," Nolan said, tapping his non-existent badge. The lying down one sat up. "Are you here to release us?" There it was. The sentence every maintenance tech dreads, one that suggests involvement in something extremely illegal. "Release you?" No, I was thinking more. Admire from a safe distance." He took a step back, then another, then tripped over the same crate again. "We've been here 12 cycles, the serious one said. "They haven't fed us in 2. Nolan squinted. "You don't look hungry." "We're not human." "Ah, right. Makes sense. Not that I thought you were. Obviously. I mean, the ears." He winced. "Sorry, that was probably rude." The humming one giggled. "You're very odd. We like odd." "Well, good. I'm glad we've established likability. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to backtrack out of here and pretend this didn't—" The panel above slammed shut. "Happen." Nolan sighed. "Fantastic." The girl stood. The one who'd been sitting placed her hand on the pod's interior. A ripple of light passed beneath it. "There is a sequence to open the containment," she said. "Great. I definitely shouldn't know that." "We can give it to you." "I definitely shouldn't accept that." The humming one tilted her head. "Do you want to die down here?" "Tempting, but I've got plans." "Well, not plans, but I was going to reheat some synth curry." "We could make curry." I'm almost impressed at how persuasive this is becoming. In the end, it wasn't the talk of curry or death that convinced him. It was the look in their eyes. Something raw, caged. Nolan had never been good at ignoring people in pain, even when they weren't technically people. He walked to the console, hands trembling. The code was simple, a repeating pattern based on musical intervals. He keyed it in, the console hissed, and the containment seal dissolved like fog. The twins stepped out. "Thank you," said the serious one. "I'm Nolan." We know, said the humming one. Of course you do. She took his arm. I'm Solen. The other nodded. Lyra. Okay, great. Pleasure. Now we should really run, right? An alarm blared. Called it, Nolan muttered. They ran, footsteps echoing, ducking through low corridors and cutting across maintenance shafts. The twins moved like liquid thought, graceful and fast. Nolan moved like a man who hadn't jogged since gym class. He collided with 3 walls, a pipe, and possibly his own regrets. Behind them, guards shouted. One fired. The bolt missed but scorched the wall beside Nolan's head. Hey, he yelled, I'm a civilian. Not anymore, Lyra said. Do I get a badge or something? No. Then I want hazard pay. They burst into the docking bay. Nolan's old hauler, the Inconvenient Truth, sat crooked in Bay 3, as if it too had no confidence in his plans. As they reached it, a squad of armored security drones dropped from above, blocking the hangar door. Nolan turned, gasping. Plan B? Solen grinned. We improvise. Lyra raised a hand. The drones hesitated, stuttered, and then collapsed in unison like synchronized dancers failing their final pose. Nolan blinked. Can all alien twins do that? Only the special ones, said Solen. I feel like I should be more concerned. Too late, Lyra said, pushing him up the ramp. Inside, systems booted. Engines flared. Nolan took the pilot's seat, hands flying over the controls like he actually knew what he was doing. As the ship lifted, explosions rocked the lower levels. A voice crackled over the comms. Unauthorized launch detected. Identify or be neutralized. Hi, Nolan said. This is janitorial. We found a mess. We're taking it outside. The ship jumped to hyperspace with a groan that sounded disturbingly like a burp. They sat in silence for a moment. Nolan slumped back, exhausted. The twins sat across from him, perfectly composed. So, he said, that went something? You helped us escape, said Solen, smiling. Yeah, let's call it a temporary lapse in judgment. Lyra leaned forward. We will stay with you now. Nolan blinked. I'm sorry, what? You freed us, she said. We belong to you. Oh no, that's not how this works. I belong to me. You do, said Solen. With us. Nolan rubbed his face. This is going to be complicated, isn't it? Lyra and Solen answered together. Yes. Nolan had made a lot of questionable life choices. Eating gas station sushi on 403, trusting a salesman who said, I swear it's not haunted tech, and dating that one diplomat's daughter who believed emotions were a government conspiracy. But agreeing to harbor 2 escaped alien twins with mind powers was starting to climb toward the top of the list. Not that he had much say in the matter anymore. Every time he suggested they part ways, one of them would smile sweetly, the lights would flicker ominously, and he'd find his socks rearranged into increasingly aggressive smiley faces. They'd been aboard the Inconvenient Truth for 4 days now, and Nolan was beginning to suspect that either the ship was bigger than he remembered, or the twins were very good at being everywhere at once. Lyra had claimed the storage bay and turned it into a meditative focus chamber by hanging wires from the ceiling and filling the air with faint whispers only she seemed to understand. Solen had redecorated the sleeping quarters with discarded star maps and sketches of castles made of energy. She referred to these drawings as probable outcomes. I'm going to say this once, Nolan told them during a particularly tense breakfast involving lukewarm synth eggs and a floating spoon that refused to be eaten from. I am not your chosen one, your bonded soul partner, your galactic anchor, or whatever other phrase you're currently giggling about telepathically. We never said you were our anchor, Solen said, grinning. That was Lyra. Lyra, who was balancing a teacup on the back of her hand while reading an ancient Earth cookbook, looked up. He is a possibility junction, not an anchor. Anchors are heavier. I feel so reassured. Their path took them through the outer loop of the Ritharan dust arc, a stretch of space famous for beautiful auroras, unreliable gravity, and pirates with impressive fashion sense. Nolan set the autopilot to minimum risk routing, which in the Inconvenient Truth's case meant they'd arrive 2 days later, but probably with fewer holes. He used the downtime to repair the starboard stabilizer, again, and attempt private conversations with the ship's increasingly nervous AI, Huxley. Can you lock the doors to keep them out of engineering? Nolan asked, whispering behind a cluster of fuses. Technically, yes, Huxley replied, but I must advise against provoking beings who have demonstrated cognitive override capability and a suspicious interest in removing internal memory cores." Nolan sighed. "Just say you're scared like a normal AI." "I am scared like a normal AI." By the end of day 5, their supplies were low, their fuel even lower, and Nolan's patience hovering somewhere around chewing insulation out of boredom. That's when the emergency signal hit. A scrambled transmission repeating on loop, garbled but desperate. He turned it up and tried to clean the signal. With emergency lockdown, genetic data conflict, requesting medical, system compromise, coordinates. Solen appeared beside him like a ghost with boundary issues. "That's near. Please warn me before materializing in my personal bubble." Lyra followed, holding a mug of something steaming and probably metaphysical. "We should go there." "Nope. That sounds like a trap. Or worse, work." "They're calling for help," Solen said softly. "We should answer." Nolan hesitated. Morality was like ship maintenance, easy to put off until something exploded. But despite everything, the twins weren't wrong. If someone really was in trouble, he sighed. "Fine, but if this ends in space zombies or bureaucrats, I blame both of you." The coordinates led them to a medical frigate floating dead in space, listing gently like it had fallen asleep during a lecture. No distress beacon, no active defenses. Just that same signal, looping over and over. They docked. The airlock opened with a hiss that sounded a little too much like a sigh. Inside, the ship was dark but breathable. They stepped cautiously into the corridor, which was lit by the dull red glow of emergency lights. Panels were scorched. Something sticky clung to the floor. Nolan wrinkled his nose. "You smell that?" "Fear," Lyra said. "No, I meant, is that burnt pudding?" They found the source of the signal in what used to be the med bay. A half-fried console blinked weakly beside a cryochamber. Inside it, a girl lay unconscious, pale and glowing faintly blue. Tubes were wrapped around her limbs. Her ears, Nolan noticed with a sinking feeling, were long and curved. "Another one of you," he said. "Should I just start building bunk beds?" "She's not one of us," Solen whispered. "She's a hybrid." The cryochamber hissed and began to open. Lyra stepped forward. "Her genetics are unstable. They tried to splice Aurelian essence into a human frame. That sounds expensive and illegal." The girl woke with a gasp, eyes wild. She looked at Nolan first. "You're the one," she croaked. "Please be more specific," Nolan said. "I'm frequently the one who broke it, the one who forgot the instructions, the one with the dumb hat." "They're coming," she said, gripping his arm. "You don't understand. You're the junction. You changed the timeline." Solen and Lyra exchanged a glance that said several volumes Nolan could not begin to translate. The girl collapsed again, unconscious. "Right," Nolan said. "So we're just collecting cryptic women with superpowers now?" "She's been partially awakened," Lyra murmured. "If they find her, they'll use her to track us." "Then we'll take her," Solen said, "and keep moving." "Great," Nolan said. "More fugitives. Maybe we should start a club or a podcast." As they turned to leave, the ship shuddered. An alarm wailed to life. Huxley's voice came through the comm. "Nolan! Multiple vessels inbound. Signatures match bounty tags. Might I suggest we run like terrified squirrels?" They bolted back to the hauler. Nolan hauled the new girl into the med bay, while Lyra shut the outer doors with a wave of her hand, and Solen jumped into the co-pilot seat. The Truth groaned and kicked into motion just as 3 sleek Hunter-class ships emerged from the dark. Weapons fire lit the void. Nolan gritted his teeth, eyes flicking across the control board. "Okay, who here knows how to fly like we're not insured?" Solen raised her hand cheerfully. "Of course you do," he muttered, switching to evasive maneuvers. "One day, just one day without explosions. That's all I want." "You'll miss them when they're gone," Lyra said serenely. The ship spun through a debris field, sparks trailing behind them. As the enemy vessels followed, the twins reached out, not just with hands but with something deeper. The air thickened, the stars bent, and one of the hunter ships simply stopped. Its engines failed. Lights dimmed. Nolan glanced at them. "Okay, I'm starting to think you two might actually be dangerous." Solen winked. "You're just figuring that out now?" Nolan woke up with a nose full of static and the vague sense that someone had tried to rewire his dreams. He sat up on the medbay cot, blinking against the soft blue lights and wondering why his boots were filled with popcorn. Again, the ship was quiet, unusually so, which meant something was definitely about to explode, or already had. He found Selene in the cockpit, humming to herself and scrolling through trajectories like she was planning a vacation. Her long ears twitched slightly at his approach. "Morning," she said. "You missed the tea ritual." Lyra burned the incense again. "Let me guess. Vanished into the whisper realm or whatever?" "No," Selene said with a smirk. "She's in the shower, singing a 400-year-old protest hymn in 3 voices." Nolan sat in the co-pilot chair and watched the stars drift past. They were skimming just outside the reach expanse now, far enough from populated systems to feel the hush of space. Behind them, 3 bounty hunters had been left drifting with scrambled sensors and existential dread, courtesy of the twins. The rescued hybrid girl, Thena, as she now remembered, was resting peacefully, finally stable thanks to a wildly illegal cocktail of gene stabilizers, space fruit, and Lyra's aggressively gentle lullabies. "Tell me something," Nolan said. "Why me?" Selene tilted her head. "That's a very human question." "It's a very tired human question. You two are not exactly low maintenance. You warp probability fields. You talk to stars. You collect orphan hybrids like galactic Pokemon. And somehow, I'm the one driving the van." "You made a choice," she said. "Back on Argol Station. You could have turned away, but you didn't. You saw us, really saw us, and didn't flinch. I flinched, internally, loudly. But you stayed." He sighed. "I should have stuck to salvage runs. Scrap doesn't argue." Lyra padded in barefoot, wrapped in a blanket made of what appeared to be holographic cat memes. She sat on the floor and stared out the viewport with eyes that shimmered like shifting nebulae. "We're almost there," she said softly. "Almost where?" Nolan asked. "To the edge," she replied. "To the fork." "More riddles," he muttered. "You people really need a handbook." Thena joined them an hour later, walking without assistance. Her ears were still faintly glowing, but the panic in her eyes had been replaced with something steadier. She looked at Nolan, then the twins, and finally spoke. "I remember the lab," she said. "They tried to make me into a conduit, not just a weapon, something more, a node between realities." "Sounds exhausting," Nolan said. "I can barely manage one reality before lunch." "They failed," she continued, "because I wasn't stable, but I felt something, a tether. It led me here, to you." Lyra and Selene said nothing, but the air felt heavier, or maybe clearer. Nolan couldn't tell anymore. His internal compass had started pointing in feelings instead of directions. "So what now?" he asked. "We just keep running? Collect more space orphans and build a commune on a moon somewhere?" "There's one last place," Selene said. "The place where it started, where they first touched our minds. Please tell me it's not filled with ancient AIs or prophetic murals." "It's a library," Lyra said, "but yes to both." They reached the coordinates a day later. A moon orbiting a forgotten planet, covered in crystalline vines and silent as breath. The structure beneath the surface was massive, metal and stone braided together like living roots. Huxley refused to scan it, citing vibes that are categorically not it. Inside, everything hummed with old light. Symbols moved across walls, sometimes pausing to look back at them. The main chamber was circular, with a pool of suspended data in its center. Shimmering strands of history, possible futures, and memory echoes. Thena stepped into it. It did not reject her. Instead, it blossomed, wrapping her in a glow that made Nolan's skin itch with goosebumps and possible enlightenment. "It's a convergence point," Lyra said. "All branches pass through here." "And I'm the junction," Nolan said, "because I was in the right place at the wrong time." "You were in the exact place," Selene corrected, "because you made the choices that led here. You became the thread that wove us together." Nolan took a breath, then another. The chamber pulsed. Something deep inside him stirred. Not power, not destiny, but understanding. Connection. Like the universe had briefly leaned down and whispered, "You're a part of this too." "All right," he said. "So, what do I do?" Thena opened her eyes. "You decide." The choices hovered in front of him, not physically, but he could feel them. Return to his old life, alone and unremarkable. Or stay. Become the tether. Help guide others like them. Build something new, not from prophecy, but from choice. He thought about scrap halls, about empty apartments and blinking consoles, about the first time he saw the twins, chained and wild-eyed, about every moment since. He smiled. "Well," he said, "guess I'm finally joining the family business." They left the chamber together, the data pool sealing behind them like a dream returning to sleep. The ship was waiting. Huxley sounded a little calmer. "Welcome back. I assume you survived." "Just barely," Nolan said. "Got any updates?" "Yes. Your sock drawer is now categorized by emotional subtext. Also, we've been hailed by a colony requesting aid for a mysterious signal on their moon." Nolan glanced at the others. They were already moving, checking instruments, planning routes, arguing over what tea to serve. He sat back in the captain's chair and looked out into the stars. He had changed, not into a hero, not into a savior, but into someone who knew he mattered, that his choices rippled, that even a stubborn, sarcastic, semi-competent man with a haunted toaster could shift the course of things. "All right, team," he said. "Let's go break fate." Lyra grinned. "Already packed snacks." Selene winked. "I see many improbable outcomes. They look fun." Thena nodded. "And I'm not afraid anymore." The engines rumbled. The stars stretched. The inconvenient truth launched into the unknown once again. Nolan laughed. "Let's just try to avoid any more prophecy pools. My brain still feels like it's been exfoliated by lightning." "Noted," Huxley replied. "No more cosmic exfoliation." And with that, they vanished into the dark, carrying with them the spark of something new, a future unbound, a story still unfolding.